Do you by chance know what this is? This is a party stick. What is up, guys? So today we are back with another Rainbow Cup video. Today we're actually going to be looking at the top 5 grass type Pokemon that I think you guys should look into. Now a quick disclaimer, this list is straight from PvPoking's ranking page. Basically we're taking the top 5 grass type Pokemon from that page and trying to figure out why they're there. We're going to take a little look into each one of these 5 and try to figure that out. So let's actually get started. Today we're looking at Venusaur first, which is... I mean, already he's being talked about as like a core member of every single team. That's pretty big. So, with 4 weaknesses here, he actually has a weakness to fire, flying, ice, and psychic typing. Having access to grass and poison already makes him a huge, nasty combination of moves to really work with inside of this cup. Now, right off the bat, we're going to get into a little bit of debate here. So we have Razor Leaf versus Vine Whip. So here's the thing. PvPoke actually prefers Vine Whip 10 out of 10 times. Literally, it has Venusaur using Vine Whip in every single matchup that it goes up against. So what does that actually mean? Well, really what I think is going on here, and this is just my personal opinion, is Vine Whip allows us to get to Frenzy Plant faster. Even though we have a raw amount of damage out of Razor Leaf straight out of the gate, Razor Leaf slows us down into getting into Frenzy Plant. Therefore, Frenzy Plant is a lot more important here rather than Razor Leaf is. Kind of like if you remember back when Abomasnow was in the Tempest Cup, really, it didn't matter that you had Outrage on him. It didn't really matter if you had Outrage or Energy Ball. Yeah, Outrage was preferred because neutrally it just hit a lot more things, but honestly, it was really the Razor Leaf that everyone was after. It's kind of the opposite here. Because Razor Leaf does an immense amount of damage per turn, is not quite as important as getting to Frenzy Plant because Frenzy Plant is just so flippin' huge. Frenzy Plant is a crazy, crazy good move. And that's kind of the point of getting our Venusaur. Frenzy Plant, Frenzy Plant, Frenzy Plant, you know? Speaking of Frenzy Plant, considering that we're gonna be running it, for sure, I don't think there's any other way around it. If you don't have Frenzy Plant, definitely consider just using either another Pokemon out of this list. I'm not going to tell you which one you have to use, but I would definitely consider straying away from Venusaur if you don't have Frenzy Plant, because it's going to be a lot more difficult to actually use it as effective as if you would have Frenzy Plant. But considering that we're going to use that, all we really need is to pick another move that gives us some coverage here, and I definitely think that Sludge Bomb makes a lot more sense than Solar Beam. And even then, Petal Blizzard is there, and Petal Blizzard unfortunately is just slow. It doesn't quite have the speed to keep up with Frenzy Plant. It does have quite a bit of damage. I think it does like 110 damage, but even then, it's just no match for Frenzy Plant. And I don't see a reason that we would want to run 2 grass moves here when we already have a grass fast move plus a grass charge move. I definitely think Sludge Bomb makes the most sense, plus it lets us hit other Pokemon at worst for like a bunch of neutral damage, and then it really helps in the Azumarill matchup. Next, we're going to move on to our Meganium here. So Meganium, if you can imagine, is almost a copy and paste of Venusaur here, which, God, I hate that. Just like Typhlosion actually lives in Charizard's shadow, kind of ends up happening here. Meganium does actually end up living in Venusaur's shadow in a lot of different ways here, but we do have some difference already with our weaknesses here. So Meganium is actually weak to Bug, Fire, Flying, Ice, and Poison. Oh, that last one hurts so bad. Poison. No! That means that in the match with Venusaur, it actually will probably lose that matchup depending on how shields are used, because Venusaur does have access to those poison type moves. So that already kind of knocks it down a peg from Venusaur, which is really why Venusaur is actually standing on top of Meganium's shoulders. But Meganium does have Razor Leaf and Vine Whip, and it's basically the same argument versus Venusaur. Vine Whip just lets us get to our charge moves that much quicker. Now, we do have Frenzy Plant, which is very important. You know, Frenzy Plant, Frenzy Plant, Frenzy Plant. But after we have Frenzy Plant, we really need to choose another move. And really, I definitely think that coverage is more important here, and Earthquake makes a lot more sense. Having Earthquake other than any other grass type move just makes a lot more sense to me. That coverage is way more important considering that Frenzy Plant is as good as it gets for the grass type move. Now I'm sure we're gonna go over those two in a versus video at some point, which by my math, this video should go up on the Sunday. So you guys are probably wondering where that versus video is. Yeah. Me too. I just kind of forgot. I've been wrapped up in my new school semester. I'm not going to bother you guys with it. Just know I'll get to it, I promise. But anyways, in that versus video, I'm sure we're going to go a little bit more in depth on these two Pokemon to try to figure out which matchups they're actually better in versus the other. But just know straight off the bat that if you're going to be using Meganium, it is going to have to dig a little bit deeper inside of itself to pull out that raw amount of energy and emotion and Poke power to do better than Venusaur. It's just, I have a feeling that's the way it's gonna go. Next, we're gonna continue the trend with the copy and paste. We're gonna paste this and give it a new name called Ivysaur. Of course, we did copy our Venusaur here. We do have basically the exact same thing, except it's Venusaur minus Frenzy Plant. Are you sold? Ivysaur actually does have some uniqueness to it, considering that it does carry Vine Whip, and it actually has Razor Leaf, and now we actually have Power Whip. Yeah, that's really weird for me to say, but we have Power Whip compared to Frenzy Plant. So those two actually compared back to back are a little bit different. So Frenzy Plant actually does end up costing 5 less energy to fire over Power Whip, and Power Whip actually doesn't do quite nearly enough damage to be considered on Frenzy Plant's level. So it is a direct downgrade in both a energy perspective and a damage perspective, but we kind of got to just rock with what we got, you know? In short, Venusaur is similar in a lot of ways to Venusaur and Meganium both, but it's kind of, I can't really say the poor man's Venusaur because it's got to be powered up to a crazy level, and that's like the rich man's Venusaur, but worse. For what it's worth though, Ivysaur versus Azumarill actually does end up ending the match with more of its HP percentage than Venusaur does. So there's that. Next, we're going to talk about Victory Bell here, and this is the one where they broke the mold. It is a grass and poison type Pokemon, but thank the Poke Gods that we do not have a direct copy paste of Venusaur yet again. So we do have the same 4 weaknesses, being Fire, Flying, Ice, and Psychic, which that's okay, there's no big deal there. But we do have access to Razor Leaf this time, but we have Acid instead for a fast move, so that's kind of interesting. Now I do think Razor Leaf does make us more of a specialist in so many ways, and Acid would be more of a gentlest move, so depending on which way you want to build the Victory Bell is kind of dependent on which way you want to go with your charge move. Just remember, Razor Leaf definitely makes you super good up against the water types, so that's more your specialty, and Acid Spray hits a ton of things for neutral damage, which makes you more of a generalist. Then we do have Leaf Blade and Acid Spray. So Leaf Blade right off the bat is our quickest grass type move, which I think makes a lot more sense to run over the other grass type moves that we do carry. Now, it could be said that it just really depends on what you really feel comfortable going with, because Leaf Blade isn't necessarily the best grass type move out there. It is very good, but there are some better ones. But I definitely think that Leaf Blade being the cheapest to activate in energy concerns makes it a lot more viable in this cup. And then we have Acid Spray. So if you haven't watched the deep dive on Quagsire, I'm gonna basically copy and paste my argument on Acid Spray from that video. And I think that a lot of the same points actually match up with Victory Bell here. It does have access to another poison type move, but I think Acid Spray is really what's going to be important, because you're going to be able to play the mind game, because you're going to be able to set up for your next matchup with your next Pokemon by just dumping a ton of Acid Spray onto your opponent. I think that's kind of where Acid Spray should be used most efficiently, and the Pokemon that have that move have that ability, and that's what makes them so freaking viable. PvPoke does not like Acid Spray on Victory Bell. I think it had it literally never use it, but it's really up to how you play with your play style, whether you think that it's efficient to use Acid Spray or another poison type move on your victory bell. So now let's actually move into our last Pokemon of the day. I'm gonna mess up this name so many times, is Executor. I always want to say Executor, like he's an executive producer for something. I don't know why. So Executor has 7 different weaknesses. Holy cow, is this boy weak to stuff. So he's actually weak to dark, fire, flying, ghost, ice, poison, and he carries a 4 times weakness to bug. Whoa, that's a lot. For what it's worth, he actually has an interaction with 13 out of the 18 typings. Whether it's a super effective move, whether it's a resistance, like he actually has interactions with all of the typings except for 5, which is crazy to me. Now on to the moves here. We do have a legacy move with Confusion, and we also have Zen Headbutt. And Zen Headbutt is just kind of that move that's just there. It doesn't really do a whole lot. Confusion is just better on all fronts for that. It does more damage. It's got better energy. It's just way better all around. Now we also do have Extrasensory, which I think deserves a mention here because it's kind of like Claydol in the Nightmare Cup. Even though Confusion is like the one and only Psychic type move in the Nightmare Cup that most Pokemon need, Extrasensory on Claydol was really interesting because on that deep dive, a lot of people pointed out that you get a little bit of extra energy, which is a little bit more important considering all of the steepness to Claydol's just raw energy that he needs to activate his charge moves. So I think Extrasensory also works in this regard as well. Not nearly to the same effect because Seed Bomb is pretty low energy cost. It's not like as high as either Psychic or Earthquake, or even Earth Power is not super high anymore, but still the same concept. So we also do have Extrasensory, which I do think people should look at, and then we do have Bullet Seed. Just kind of know that Extrasensory is going to make you more of a generalist. Confusion also in that category as a generalist, whereas Bullet Seed is going to make you a lot more of a specialist trying to attack those water types. It just kind of depends on which route you want to take. Now we do have Seed Bomb, which is definitely better than both Psychic and Solar Beam, but which one of those should we actually use? So Psychic versus Solar Beam, I think this is really just going to come down to which fast move you chose. If you definitely went the specialist route and went Bullet Seed, I definitely think you should have some neutral coverage for just whatever pops up at you. If you have Confusion or if you went with Extrasensory, I definitely think that Solar Beam could help in a lot of situations. But you could still also go with that Psychic just for that pure generalist, I want to hit everything for neutral type Pokemon. It would work both ways. It just kind of depends on which route you're taking and kind of what you need more coverage for. So that is actually it for the top 5 grass type Pokemon, guys. We only have one more typing with the water type. Now, I've been doing these kind of every 2 days. It just depends on your time zone. I may have run 3 days on one of these, but either way, basically these are every other day. So in 2 more days, we're going to go over the largest typing in the cup, which is water typing. It's going to be a long, treacherous road. I can already tell you, Quagsire. Just use Quagsire. As always, if you guys have any ideas for deep dives that you want to see, please leave them down in the comments below. I'd be happy to add them to the spreadsheet, tally them up, and then we'll get to them as soon as I possibly can. I really do try to get to every single Pokemon that I can, but the ones that are higher voted for, I just usually go with those. And then if there's a tie, I usually go with alphabetical order. That's just how I end up doing it. But thank you guys so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for watching. Always remember that you can like a video if you want to. If not, you can be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in those comments below. And until our next video, I will catch you then.